Hello, welcome back. Yes, we're going to be doing monsters. We're dealing with the monster stat block for a golem. Uh, Sorry about yesterday. I couldn't do it yesterday. Had to make sure I get everything organised for my day job, which I'm cutting down from full-time to half part-time. So, yeah, that's why I wasn't here yesterday. But today I'm here, and we're going to deal with the Iron Golem. Not a bad monster. It's actually pretty good. I wouldn't say it's badly designed, really. Maybe a little bit of tweaking required, but I don't expect it to be a huge job. So here we go. I will be taking some ideas from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, not just 5e. 5e is certainly sort of what we're building for, but a lot of the stuff from older versions of D&D, I think, have a place to go. And so I have every intentions of doing something with that. So yes, I hope that you will enjoy this whole process. I have been enjoying the process a lot. I'm going to put up a poll. I suggest grabbing some food, some drink, making sure you are comfortable, and we'll get started fairly quickly, okay? I don't want to muck around. I want to get it done and move on so that we can spend time doing other things. Anyway, let's get started. Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about tabletop role-playing games, specifically Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Why? Because the new monster manual is coming out next year, and I was part of the development of the 2014 monster manual. I did a lot of the beta and alpha playtesting behind closed doors, and I think that the Iron Golem deserves some attention. I wouldn't say it is a bad monster, not at all, but I still think there's some things that need to be done to help sort of alleviate some of the issues that I saw with this creature or monster in your game. And, it's a high-level monster, so it really, how many times do you have characters rocking around at level 16? It's a challenge rating 16 monster. So your characters really should be about level 16, and that should be like a reasonable fight. And it's an Iron Golem, so it probably should be a pretty tough fight. Is it, though? That's the question. I've used the Iron Golem a lot. Like, I have used the stat block as written many times. I have modified the Iron Golem many times, and I have a document ready to go, which we're going to go to in a second. Fred Huber, hello, patron, thank you for being here. The technology, yes, we do have the technology, our brains, that's what we're using today. And Negative Space, hello. Big boxing gloves. I don't know about big boxing gloves, but I thought it's funny, a concept. I think the sword and the axe is fine. We're all good with that. Anyway, let's go over and start looking at what we need to do with this. I'm going to go through the maths very quickly and sort of just deal with the maths side of things first before sort of pulling apart some of the other stuff. And then, of course, I will be checking on your feedback to see if there's anything that I may have missed or not considered, or any errors in my calculations that I have not taken into consideration. This does happen in a live stream. I make mistakes. It happens. It's all right. Okay. So here we go. Here is the Iron Golem, and this is going to be the stat block that we work with. Okay. So today is the 10th for me. I'm in New Zealand. We are in the future. It is the 10th of September. So the first thing to be aware of is this monster here is a challenge rating 16. It has a proficiency bonus of +5. And the first thing is that means that we need to make sure we build it to be able to fight a level 16 character or a party of level 16 characters. Now, I know a lot of people will be potentially saying, Fred, this should be really a legendary monster. But my opinion is that is not true. Often with an Iron Golem, you can have just one Iron Golem, but I think that the Iron Golem works best when it comes in a pair, because they're like the guards for, they're high, they're really strong, powerful guards to deal with magic users quite often, and melee, marshals. And they are usually I would say in pairs. So that means that whatever we're building isn't going to be the only monster on the battlefield. Okay, so I would assume when you're designing that you're thinking there's probably going to be at least two. Okay, So we're going to go through some of the maths for this monster, since its challenge rating is level 16. And I'm using the Dungeon Master Guide because it's not perfect, but there's a quick monster stat block builder in here that I think is at least a good starting point. We will have to correct for some of the things, but that's all right. So level 16, it says challenge rating 16 should have a proficiency bonus of +5. So the thing is, does our character at level 16 have a proficiency bonus of +5? And yes, it does. Okay, so that's all good. So we got that maths right. Next, it should have an armor class of 18. Now, one of the things you'll notice is the armor class on the Iron Golem is extremely high, and it has a minus to its dexterity. Like it's got a 9 for its dexterity score, -1 is the proficiency, which means that most of that armor class is 10 plus its natural armor, which must be quite significant, right? And the monster looks like it's armored because it is an armored monster. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, the problem with having a 20 like it has, since really the armor class should be an 18, is it's probably pushed it up a bit too high. I looked at the maths for this, and the maths are pretty in line with being a challenge rating 16 monster. The only things that were slightly slightly funky was things like the armor class and its damage output. But its hit points are good. Its ability scores are really not an issue because it's got a +7 and a +5, and the +5 and the +7 are keyed into its main attacks, so it's not at a disadvantage to the player characters, so that's all good too. So ultimately, I think it's much smarter to, and I know the few of you are going to be saying, you cannot drop down the armor class of the Iron Golem. But can I just explain to you that if you're playing at high level, generally what happens at high level is your combats are either way too slow and they're finished within like one round. You may even get to the second round, but you'd be very lucky. One round and it's all over. It's all done because they don't have enough hit points. The issue is not about whether the player characters hit the target, because if we have them missing too much, then you draw out your combat, and that's when you'll find your combats will take much longer. Okay, it is probably better to have your players and your monsters hitting about 50% of the time or 70% of the time. Okay, so that you're only missing about 50 to 25% of the time. And that would pretty much put us in line with that. It would be pretty close, between 50 and 25. So dropping it down to 19, honestly, I don't think is an issue. So I'm going to do that, because pushing it up by 2 points kind of pushes it into another challenge rating bracket. And even though those challenge rating brackets on page 274 of the Dungeon Master Guide are generally not viewed as being particularly good, you've got to work to some basis, okay? And we can't use the monster manual. So we're going to be using that. So I'm dropping down the armor class. For those of you who feel like I have committed, I don't know, a sacrilege, trust me, this is going to work a lot better. Okay, next, average damage. The average damage for this monster is 210. And I was looking at it and thinking, oh, is it within the band? And actually, they've done a really good job of figuring out exactly the band. So average. So the maximum hit points that you should be able to do with this little sucker, sorry, not the maximum hit points, but the maximum number of hit points that it will have, being 220 times 10, comes to 200, plus you add the 100 from the Constitution modifier, comes out at 300. Now, I think that's pretty much correct. And I think that's probably in line with where we needed to be. So if you take a D10, 5.5 is the average, and we multiply that by the number of, oh God, what is it? Sorry, it's not 5.5, it's the other one. If we multiply 5, the con modifier, multiply that by 16, we should get that. Are we out? Is 100 the wrong number? I'm just trying to think about this now. Challenge rate 16. D. Oh, it's 200. That's right. Wrong number. I'm out. Adding the wrong number. Whoopsies. So 5. Not that. 5 times 20. Yeah, so it's 100. So the maths on it is all correct for the hit points. I would recommend using the top end, the maximum of 300. It's a challenge rating 16 monster with characters facing it that are probably going to be at least level 16. If they're lower, they should be finding it very hard to beat this monster, okay? Particularly if you have a couple of them. So 300 hit points is where I would aim for. If you need to tone it down because your group is not quite as skilled, then you go for like 210 or something in between. Okay, so that's what I want to do. I don't want to change the speed of this monster too much. I don't think that's going to be necessary. I don't think there was much of a difference in AD&D, so the monster manual or monstrous manual for AD&D second edition. I don't think its speed was that much different in terms of, I mean, the speed stuff was slightly different in this game anyway, so size, appearance number, number appearing, it says here 1, armor class 3, movement 6. Movement 6 is pretty standard, so we'll just leave the movement alone. We won't muck with that. Okay, next, strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. I don't think we need to mess with any of them. I don't think it's very intelligent. I don't think it's got that much charisma. I don't think it's particularly dexterous. You know, it's probably very strong. It's got a lot of con, and I would say average wisdom. All right. Now, it doesn't have any saving throws, so I'm a little concerned about not having a monster with any saving throws for sure. And why does it have no skills whatsoever? Now, I guess the idea being that it's not programmed to do anything but fight, but I think that there are some things that it could have, like athletics and intimidation, because this thing wouldn't have to work very hard to be intimidating. The problem is the intimidation that you would have would be so low. It was a -5. So this is where, you know, we've got question marks here. Is that going to work? Intimidation, if you're keying it into a mathematical number, is probably going to be completely pointless. I think the intimidation factor may well be better served by proving just how tough it is in a battle. Yeah. Okay, it doesn't have damage resistance. Thank God for that. Damage immunity is much easier to track as a dungeon master. Damage immunity is really easy. If you do that type of damage, you do no damage, rather than having to half damage, which I'm thankful for. It's got fire, which makes sense because attacking a thing like this, even in AD&D, was really stupid. Fire will actually heal it. It's got poison. Well, it breathes poison, so it shouldn't be affected by poison. It's not affected by psychic, so you can't affect it that way. Psychic damage isn't going to be a problem for it. And then it's got bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage from non-magical attacks that aren't adamantian. And that's always been a very confusing thing. So in other words, you need to have a magical weapon to use it that's also adamantian. Is that what we're trying to say here? Or are we saying that it needs to be a magical weapon, or it needs to be made out of adamantian? And I think I want to put an or in here. So bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical attacks. Magical attacks from non-magical attacks, or weapons made from adamantium. Okay, that'll make a lot easier for you to figure out. There is a convention to it, but I think that's going to make it easier for me to understand and for everybody else, because I used to run it like you had to have an adamantium weapon that was also magical, which means that you couldn't get past the bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage. Fire damage didn't do anything to it. Poison damage didn't do anything to it. Psychic damage didn't do anything to it. So the marshals would wind up just standing in the front, blocking, while everybody at the back end was just hiffing as much magic at it to try to take it down. And I think that was probably the wrong way to run it. I've done it that way, if you take that interpretation, and it sucks for a game master and the players. And it doesn't suck for the Iron Golem, because it stays up for a long time. But I think ultimately that's the best way to word it. Condition immunities, let's have a look at that. So we can't be charmed, and this is possibly why we're not having to worry about wisdom. The only thing is that it would say that would suggest to me that you could use magic that is illusionary magic, and it would probably be because it's dumb. Its wisdom's only average, a 0 modifier. So wisdom saving throws are usually around, affecting your mind, charming you, or frightening you, which you can't do. So we don't have to worry about this so much, I guess, intimidation, because it doesn't get frightened itself. I guess that's on the other end. And then you've also got the other aspect of it, which is the illusions. That's wisdom. So this is probably fine to have it built that way. That's why they haven't got a saving throw for wisdom. So I'm going to take out that as a concern, because that would be its weakness, right? But it really isn't, because it's got that condition immunity to being charmed. But you could use illusionary magic to trick it, which would be fine. Okay, next. Exhaustion. Well, it's a construct. It probably should not get exhausted. It's a robot. So I'm fine with that. We don't want it getting frightened. It doesn't feel fear. It just keeps going. It doesn't care about anything. It's basically the Terminator. Paralyzed. So you can't paralyze this thing. You can't petrify it. You can't poison it. Now, that is all in line with the existing stat block that 5e has put forward. Is that too much? Let's have a quick think about that. I'm all right with the poisoned condition being there. That makes sense. Your poison damage doesn't affect you. The poison condition shouldn't affect you either. Petrified, I'm not too sure so much about. I guess it's about being able to change your form. The idea being that, constructs like this you can't transform them into a bunny rabbit or a little worm or a snail. You can't change the material they're made out of and make them into glass and then shatter them or something like that. And it's probably why petrified turning to stone has been included. So, okay, that's fine. Paralyzed, so you can't paralyze it. I guess this makes it quite tough to deal with. In terms of conditions, you're not going to be able to shut it down that way. You're going to have to do damage to it in some way or trick it. Frightened makes sense. Exhaustion, charmed, so that's all good. Is there anything else that we need to include in terms of condition immunities? I'm really loath to add more because let's get real. It's probably not a great idea, in my opinion. It's probably not a great idea to have too many condition immunities. It's not the end of the world if you do, but it would be nice not to get too carried away with things. Unconscious? No. Can we stun this thing? Well, that means that potentially this could be stunned by a monk. So being stunned, it'd still be a thing that you could do to this. Apparently you can't paralyze it, but a monk could stun it. How big is this? I think it's not that big. It's large size. Okay. And the monk is disrupting it in some way. It doesn't have any chakra energy channels running through it. I'm tempted to add stunned as well. If it's got paralyzed, then why is stunned not there as well? Restrained? No, I think you should be able to potentially restrain the thing. I don't think it's big enough or strong enough that you couldn't restrain it. Prone? Yes, you should be able to knock this thing prone. Absolutely. Petrified? Okay, we've already talked about that. Paralyzed? Invisible? No. Incapacitated? No. Grappled? No. We want you to be able to grapple the thing. It might be hard, but you should still be able to do it. Frightened? We've talked about that. Deafening it? Yeah. Not charming it. Blind? We want you to be able to deafen it and blind it. So those are things that constructs should have vulnerability to. But actually the stun thing, I don't want you to be able to stun this thing. I think if you got paralyzed there, stunned is getting a bit too silly. So I love monks, but their stunned feature shouldn't work on every single thing. And stunning a construct, I suppose there's a way of sort of, saying how that works. But anyway. Okay, so dark vision. 120 feet dark vision. I don't really have too many problems with that. Should it be blind sight? No, because it's using ears, using eyes. So dark vision. It's not like it. I mean, it's a construct, but it is still set up with some sort of sensory system in place. And clearly it's been designed specifically so it can see in the dark. It's a robot. So that's fine. We'll leave that alone. Passive perception, leave it alone too. I don't think we need to mess with it. Understands the languages of its creators but can't speak. I'm fine with that as well. So yeah, that's not too bad in terms of what we have here for an iron golem. I think that's reasonable. I think we can probably get rid of the intimidate because it's not going to work. Even if we give it expertise, it's not going to be effective. So let's ditch that. And then the athletic skill, I think that's reasonable. That will make it harder for them to grapple with it. If it's got athletics, then when it makes a check of some kind, it's probably going to be pretty good at that. So how would that look? That's going to be 5 plus the 7. So that's not too bad. 5 and 7 is 12 plus 12. If there are any more that you think I should add on there that might be appropriate for it, you let me know. But I think athletics it should have. As for dexterity, int, and charisma, I'm going to have to think a bit more about that. I mean, most things aren't going to affect it. Now, one of the things that's interesting, though, is they didn't mention anything about lightning. Does anybody remember that the old version of the Iron Golem was affected by hitting it with a lightning bolt or lightning damage of some kind? Now, very few things do lightning damage. You have shocking grasp, you have lightning bolts, you have chain lightning, but the number of individuals who have access to lightning is kind of slim. I think it might be appropriate, even though level 16 characters, marshals, are going to have magic weapons, more than likely. It would be unusual if they didn't. They're probably going to have at least something. The older version, in AD&D, said you had to have a +3 magic weapon, which is asking a lot. I'm not going to say that, but I'm thinking maybe we should give it a vulnerability. Damage vulnerabilities are rare in monsters, but there is precedence for it in the monstrous manual, and I wanted to go over that in a second with you and just sort of ask you what you think about that. That would be where my head would go, is give it a vulnerability. It's got a lot of damage immunities, it's got a lot of damage condition immunities as well, so giving it a vulnerability would be nice. So even if they know, and they're metagaming and they know the thing is vulnerable to lightning damage, there's very few in the party who can hit it with lightning. That may be a way of sort of making the fight a little bit quicker and just making it a little bit more interesting too. Okay. Yeah, rust monsters can affect the Iron Golem. No, I'm not going back to damage reduction. Damage reduction is damage resistance, negative space. I don't think leaning into damage resistance is a good idea, honestly. Not unless it's a really good idea for doing so. Anyway, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think the Iron Golem should have lightning vulnerability? Von. Whoa, that's not quite right. Let's try that again. Vulnerability. Vulnerability. Okay. We go also look. You've got to be careful that we don't make the monster impossible to run to. I looked at is there a berserker mode for an Iron Golem, and there really has never been an indication of that. And I don't think that it really necessarily makes sense that it does that. Berserker mode means what? Like it attacks straight away, it does more damage, I don't know. Anyway, let's have a look here. No, I'm not making it legendary derp. I really don't think that it's a legendary monster. I think it's a tough monster, but not a legendary monster. Pile driver, like in the animated cartoons, fist down, driving the target halfway into the floor. Well, look, I agree, Fred Huber, it does need to do more damage. I don't think the Iron Golem does enough damage. I definitely agree with that, for sure. It's large, and large creatures I like to add in. They should have stronger push, shove, and knockdown abilities. And that's what the athletics score will do. By giving it an athletics proficiency, okay, which is what we've done, it's now got a 12. That'll make it easier for it to do all those things. Okay, so that kind of covers that. Hello, Nacho. Nacho is a patron, just like Fred Huber. Thanks for being here. And Derp is too. Give it an elbow drop extra attack if it knocks down. I don't think that's necessary. Again, like the slam attack and the elbow are essentially the same. You know, it's not the Iron Giant here. It's only large size. It's not colossal or huge or gargantuan in size. A strong golem with me, or poison breath. The poison breath is something we need to consider. The poison breath, we do need to consider how that's going to work. Okay, absolutely, I definitely agree with that. Overboard, a moderator. Thanks for being here, Joe. Nice to have you. Give it a throw attack so it can lift. Yeah, but if you decide to throw it, like, I'm not sure that that's absolutely... Is that really necessary? Do we really need to have a throw? Is that something that is indicative of what the Iron Golem would do? Armor class 30. Sam Razor. No, I think armor class 30 is getting a bit silly. I don't think so. I don't think so. The problem with that is that means that they will really hit the target. If they've got a plus 15 at that level, which they may have, it's possible, it can happen. A plus 15 would be plausible at that level, at level 16. They're going to hit about 50% of the time with an armor class of 30. And I don't want the fight to drag out too long. I don't want to design 4E. And I don't want to design Dungeons & Dragons 2024 either, which is what they're going to wind up very shortly with. Well, you guys are going to have a lovely time with Weapon Mastery. Have a great time. Knock back 20 feet and falls prone. Yes, I suppose you could do something like that, but you can push somebody prone with just the shove action. Does it matter if it's only 5 feet? It doesn't matter if it's 20 feet and they're knocked prone. I have a think about that a bit more. Can we give the Iron Golem an eye beam, specifically of the elemental that heals it? Oh, you want to give it an eye beam like Gort from the day the Earth stood still? I feel like that's a different monster. You and eye beams coming out. It does fire damage. Okay, so somebody agrees that the idea of vulnerability to lightning damage is a good idea. Okay, cool. That's something, I guess. Rust monsters will still affect it, yes. You like the Flesh Golem Berserk. Yeah, the problem with... I agree the Flesh Golem should have the Berserk mode. But I don't want to duplicate and kind of piss all over another Golem type by stealing their cool thing. And the cool thing that the Iron Golem does, and it did in AD&D, is it breathes poison gas. And that's the thing I think that makes it stand out. It's not making an attack with its fists or its elbows or doing a wrestling move or using a sword that's magical. It's about the idea that it's literally able to lay down and smack you fairly effectively with some poison gas. I've wondered if it makes sense for there to be an ability in the game to do 150 damage. I feel like 200 damage with vulnerability is a lot. Well, we don't have to do it. You know, we don't have to put it in. Only one person liked the idea. Okay? You want to make it flammable poison gas. I like accidental fireball for PC's torches, healing the... Well, fire damage is going to heal it. That's for sure. Okay, let's go back to the stat block in the page, and let's work our way through some of the other things. Since I think at this point, the establishment is, even though lightning damage would slow down the Iron Golem, we don't necessarily have to do something like that if we don't want to. Okay, that's cool. I mean, it wasn't a huge thing for me. I wasn't really sort of connected to it that much. Okay, the next thing, these bits I think are actually reasonably fine the way they are. If you have a look at the original stat block, it has got fire absorption, immutable form, magic resistance, and magic weapon, all of which I think are actually perfectly fine. I'm happy for them to be that way. So fire absorption, whenever the golem is, so if I got this on the right screen, yeah. Whenever the golem is subjected to fire damage, it takes no damage and instead regains a number of hit points equal to equal to the fire damage dealt. I think that's perfect. I don't think it needs any change. It works exactly the way I think it should, and I think most of you would agree. Immutable form, again, the golem is immune to any spell or effect that would alter its form. And this is why I wanted to include, this is why they probably included petrified, so you can't turn it to stone, you know? Petrification is basically turning to stone, right? And then magic resistance. The golem has advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects, so you'll get advantage on any saving throw that you make against magic. Sweet. But even if you do that, like, you know, its dexterity saving throw is going to be low as, so will its intelligence one, and so will the charisma one. They're really bottomed out. You're literally going to have almost close to a 0 modifier when you get to adding it to your dice roll, if you have advantage on those. That's probably a bit of a problem. I would say that we probably want to boost up the dexterity and the intelligence and the charisma, so that at least you're looking at roughly about a 5 modifier to your dice roll. Otherwise, most of the time they're going to fail the dexterity, the intelligence, and the charisma saving throws, even with advantage. Advantage will mean nothing. So, although I have no problems having the magic resistance thing there, and I don't think it needs to be changed, I think it's the saving throws that are the big issue. Next is magic weapons. The golem's weapon attacks are magical. Now, it doesn't state how much of a bonus their weapon attacks are. Their weapon attacks can consist of either a slam attack or a sword attack. Okay? That's what they have. Ignore that free action thing there that you guys saw. Just leave that alone. I have something in mind. It's been my experience that the multi-attack for the golem, being 2 melee attacks, whether you get to pick the slam attack or you get to pick something like the sword attack, is not enough, unfortunately. That you're not doing enough attacks and you're not doing enough damage. And this has been consistently a problem that I've noticed. I found that there was a better outcome for the monster when I was doubling the number of attacks they were making per turn. I don't think there needs to be a bonus action. I don't think there needs to be a reaction. Just give it more attacks rather than doing more damage. 4 attacks by this monster means that if you're running 2 of these things, you're going to have roughly about 8 attacks to make. So you roll 8 dice and you're done. Okay? I don't think that's a big issue. Most dungeon masters should have at least 10 dice in their pool ready to go. So, you know, even 10 to 12 dice, you know, and you just roll the whole lot all at once. If you've got advantage, then you roll them all at once. I don't want to give the monster advantage because that's just going to increase the number of dice you have to roll. So I think that's the secret to this monster is we need to give it more attacks. 2 attacks is probably not enough. And we're going to have a look at the maths in a second to determine how much damage it needs to do. Okay. Now that we've said that, its weapon and its sword attack could be, I mean, for me, it could be based off dexterity or strength. Its strength is its strongest asset, so we're going to use strength, which is a +7. That's 2 points higher than most characters will ever get when they're playing up to level 16. So it's got a huge advantage in terms of that aspect of it. But here's the other thing, is players can get magic items, you know, +2, +1, +3. So that's, and then they can get bonuses from their class that gives them another point on top. So we're kind of in a really reasonable position with this. So I would take that 7. If we add 5, we get 12, and then they have only listed the attack bonus as a 13, as if whatever the bonus is that the weapon magical weapon attack gives you is just like a +1. I think that's going to be a problem. If we have a look at the Dungeon Master Guide and look at challenge rating 16, it says that the bonus for their attack should be a 9. A 9 is way too low. Okay, at least they made it a 13 in the stat block. Okay, in the original stat block, but 13 is still too low. If you think about how high will your ability modifier be when you are level 16, chances are you will have a +5, and then you're adding another 5 points, okay, for your proficiency bonus. That's 10. And then most martial classes can get another +1 from somewhere else, easy, just as part of their fighting style. So that's an 11. Okay. And then once you've done that, it's actually very easy for them to get advantage or to have a magic weapon. And at that level, you're probably going to have a +2 or a +3 magic weapon if you're a martial. It's quite likely that that's going to be the case. And you may have advantage on top of that. So I think it would be much smarter to view the number that we need to hit as being 11. I would add another 3. I'd actually make that more like a 14. I think a 14 is going to be much smarter to add to our Iron Golem so that it's going to hit a bit more often. You also have to take into consideration that martials will have pretty good armor class. And if their armor class is at least a 20 and up, which it probably will be, that means we're going to be probably missing about just over 25% of the time, but 75% of the time we should hit the target. And that's probably where we want to be. So I'm pushing this up. I know the table says something else, but it's wrong. Okay, when it comes to attack bonuses, sometimes it just doesn't, it's not good enough. Make that a 14, okay? So I'm going to make that a 14, so it's got a slightly better chance. You could probably even make it a 15, you know? If you've got archery as a skill, like, you know, that fighting skill is, you know, your 5 for your modifier, a 5 for your proficiency bonus, that comes to 10, and then you add a 2 for your archery, that's 12, and then if you've got a magic weapon on top of that, that's +3, then you're looking at a 15. But I'm going to say, look, either they're going to have advantage or going to have a magic weapon, so they're probably looking at a 14 or 15 for their mathematical hit for the player characters. And I want to be in line with them as much as possible, so we're not missing too many times. Okay. Will armor classes be greater than 20? Absolutely. It's certainly possible. But I did say, remember, that it's all right for the monsters and the players to be hitting or missing about 50 to 25% of the time. In that range or band is probably all right. Otherwise, it stretches out too long. Okay, next. Damage output. How much damage at level 16 should we be doing? If we have a look at what it's got here, you'll notice very quickly that it's not a lot of damage. For a level 16 monster, gets 2 attacks, a 20. That's the average. Plus a 23. 43 points of damage. That's all you're doing. Your damage output for your monster here is way too low. Where should we be sitting? At least twice that. Okay, 16. So it says 16 per round. We should be doing about 99 to 104 points of damage. And we're nowhere near that. Nowhere near. So even if we give it two more attacks and give it 4 attacks, which will help boost up the amount of damage we do, we can multiply that by 2 now, and we get 86. We're still too low, which means that each one of these attacks has to do a bit more damage. So we're going to go here. We're going to make this 4 attacks. And we're going to have to adjust this number. I'm going to add in an additional D8. So we'll make this a 4. And then we'll make this a 4. I believe that's correct. Have I got this done? 4, 4. And I need a pen. I'll write it on my hand once I've done. Yes. Okay. Let's do the maths for this. So 4. Clear this. So the first one, the slam attack, the average damage. So it is 4.5, which is the average for an 8-sided dice, multiplied that by 4, it's 18, add the 7, and we get 25. So we're going to go 25 instead here. That's good, because 4 attacks and 25 would roughly be just over 100, around 100 hit points. So that's a good sign. That's great. Let's do the next one. The next one should be just slightly more, I would imagine. So we have a 10-sided dice this time. So that's 5.5 is the average. And we're going to multiply that by 4 equals 22. And then we add the 7. So it's going to be a little bit higher. Okay, so 29. So it's about, I don't know, 4 points higher, 29 for that attack. Okay, so we've got those attacks. One has better reach than the other, and I don't think we should restrict it to it being slam or sword. I think it's better to just go with, you know, you pick whichever one you want to do. Okay, do you want to do bludgeoning damage? Do you want to do slashing damage? You're probably going to go with the sword attack. So now let's have a look at how much damage we're doing per round if they hit. If they hit. Okay, so 29 multiplied by 4. Let's just say we use just the sword. Is 116. And a challenge rating 16, it says here, is up to 104. Can I assure you that at level 16, a lot of these tables in terms of damage don't mean very much. Level 16 characters got so many hit points and so many ways to get hit points back in the middle of the fight. They're being a little bit higher. If they decide to just use the sword to make attacks, it really won't matter in the slightest. So we're going to just leave that. Either that, or we can make them identical so that it will always punch out exactly the same amount of damage. So you could choose to go slam or sword, and there's no mechanical benefit that's greater than the other. That would be another way of seeing it, but I don't think it really matters. I think the smart thing is if they have swords, they make sword attacks. And if they don't have swords, they don't make sword attacks, they use a slam attack. That's fine. Okay, the slam attack there is basically if you manage to disarm the creature, which of course is possible, I guess. Now, if we go with if we only do slam attacks and doing the least amount of damage, which is 25, multiplied that by 4, if we hit with all of them, it does 100 points. So that sits within the band we were looking for. I think that's fine. I think the damage output's going to be fine. 4 attacks, you pick which one. We assume they're probably going to use the sword attack rather than the slam attack, unless they don't have a sword. Okay, or they lose it. Or the players make it disappear. I don't know. You know, who knows? They might do something with the sword. But our Iron Golem is not a huge disadvantage if it loses the sword, because its slam attacks and its sword attacks should be magical. Makes 4 melee attacks, and the Golem's weapon and unarmed attacks are magical. There we go. We'll just add that little bit in there just to make sure it's clear if anybody was getting confused. Okay. We're going to do the poison in a second, but before I do that, I want to just jump back to chat and see what people have to say. And we're doing all right in terms of time, which is great. Somebody has got here, like Breaking Berserker. Yes, yes, yes. We've covered that already. So we're doing a lot more damage, well and truly more than twice the amount of damage it was doing before. Takes 20 seconds to constitute them. I'm not a fan of affecting people's constitution ability scores. I mean, there are things out there that do that, but I don't think it's necessary. I think the poison condition should be included. When you take poison damage, you should also have the poison condition. I think that's reasonable. We'll just keep it with that. Spiked chest, grapples, adds damage. Oh, come on. Well, I'll let you guys do that in your own games rather than build that into the stat block. Its chest is an Iron Maiden. That's a completely different monster that you're talking about there, Sam. CR16 needs at least 6 attacks. No, I've tested this quite a few times. I even tested it when I was running through Ravenloft and the Curse of Strahd, and I found that 4 attacks is actually the sweet spot. It was probably just about where it needed to be. Would choose from spike body. 10 sets of dice is a beginner. Yeah. 10 sets of dice. No. You buy them singularly. You buy D20s as singles. You don't go buying sets of dice. That's silly. You just buy 8 or 10 single D20s. You don't buy a set, 10 sets of dice for a beginner. That's silly. From the account action economy, the players have 8 to 12 attacks. Yeah, but you're not going to have one golem. There should be 2. You should usually use 2. Okay, I would use 2, not 1. And the golem shouldn't be a solo monster. It really shouldn't. It's not really. It never really was designed to be just a solo creature or monster. Even in older versions, I don't think that it was ever intended to be that way. A bonus for attacking gnomes. Are you kidding me? You guys are playing with me now. You're just messing with me. It has a bonus to attacking anything. I've given it a boost. I think crazy, but I assume I don't have enough. Let's deal with. I think we're gonna have to deal with the poison breath. So let's deal with the poison breath. You want it to vaporize gnomes? Really? What changes does the poison breath need? Okay. Let's go to there and see how we go. All right. And before I do the poison breath, I'm going to boost up some of its saving throws, just because I have found that as soon as you hit it with a dexterity saving throw, an intelligence saving throw, and a charisma saving throw, which there are very few of, but there are some, usually you're winning. The players are going to win. It's the win button. So let's at least even out some of the problems here. So a -1, and we have a proficiency of 5. That means our dex is now a +4. And if we have advantage, that counts as kind of a 9. So it's not going to be the best, but at least it protects it a little bit. I'm not going to give it to its strength because it's already got a +7. That's good enough. Fine with that. Next, intelligence. Proficiency bonus and intelligence. Well, it's a -4. So if we give it a 5 to that, we're only getting a +1 to our intelligence. Intelligence is still going to be the weakest point of it. If you think +1 and it has advantage because of a saving throw, dealing with spells, then it means that's essentially a 6. Okay. So 9 and a 6. Okay, now charisma is the worst one, and we definitely need to give that to there because it's definitely a no-brainer. Hit it with that, and you can smack it around and just make it your bitch. And I don't want you to be able to do that. So, so we're going to include these. These are the saving throws I am adding in. We could add in all of them, but I don't think we need to. Okay, I think those are the 3 that we need to concern ourselves with. Otherwise, it just really doesn't have a chance. I want the monster to be able to be able to cope with something. Even those small benefits that we've done are really only making them fairly average in terms of a saving throw, even with advantage. At level 16, you probably got a group rocking around with a paladin with the aura, and the aura is just bat nuts crazy. It's awesome. But also pretty hard to fail a saving throw for the players. They're usually going to succeed every single time. Okay. Poison breath. Recharge on a 6. Now I looked at AD&D, and AD&D, this book here, actually stated in it that generally what should be happening is every 7 rounds you should be able to use your poison breath. So a recharge of 6 means there's a 1 in 6. That's close enough. I'm actually fine with that. You'll get to use it at least once before you won't be able to use it again. A cone of 15 feet is probably going to get maybe 2 characters. If we made it bigger, we might be able to get more, but I think generally a cone of 15 feet is only going to get the first 2 in the front in terms of our breath weapon. So we'll assume that whatever damage output we are doing is really only going to affect 2 characters. because to get 3 characters in the cone is going to be kind of difficult. Generally, because your back line is going to be at least a good 30 feet back from wherever the front line is. And if your front line has got 2 individuals, even if you've got 3 people in the front line, to hit them with the cone is still difficult because they're probably right up in your face, so you won't be able to position it right. So I'm going to say it's only going to really hit maybe 2, okay? 15-foot cone. So we won't change the range of it and its shape. That's all good. Each creature in that area must make a DC 19 Constitution saving throw. Okay, that's fine. Constitution tends to be one of the better ability scores that a marshal will have, so they're not going to be shirks at that. So, the back line probably not even going to be in range, so they're not even going to get a chance to make a saving throw because they won't be in the target range. So what is the expected score that you would get for a level 16 character? Well, your ability modifier for con might well be a 5. Let's take the biggest number, 5. Okay? If you are making saving throws at your end as a monster against the players, you'll be dealing with them using a 5. So let's say it's 5, which it is. The monster does in fact have a 5 con, so let's go with 5. And its strength is +7, but we're not going to worry about that too much. So let's say 5. Okay, now we add in the proficiency bonus, which is 10, and then we add in another number, which is 8, which becomes 18. And if we look at the quick build one, it says an 18 is our expected sort of range for a saving throw on this monster. The players are probably going to have about an 18. You can push it a little bit higher and go 19, and you haven't pushed it out of the challenge rating bracket. I think that's perfect. The saving throw is right on the money. Well done. Nice job. Problem though is I think the damage output is probably too low, because you're only really going to, realistically, you're only going to hit maybe 2 characters if you're lucky. Yeah, you're very unlikely to get 3 characters. So I think this is only going to come to about 90 points of damage. That's if they fail the saving throws. If they succeed, it will do some damage, but ultimately, I don't think that's quite enough. I think we need to add in another dice to actually push it up. So let's go here, and if I just go like that. So 45 times 2 is 90, and we really want to be hitting a range of 99 to 104, something closer to that. So if we assume that we hit 2 targets and we added 1 more dice in, we might just get to where we need to be. So if I go here, clear that. So an 8, average of 8 is a 4.5. Multiply that by 11 equals 49. And then 49 twice is, well, let's just go with 49 because that's what it'll be. 49 multiplied by 2, if we hit 2 targets, is about 98. That's much more in line with where it needs to sit. It's like 1 point off. It's close enough. Do you know what I mean? So we go 49. And I think that is your poison damage and your cone breath sorted out. Now, does it need to have any free actions? Again, I was looking at AD&D and trying to decide what to do with that. I'm going to read through the passage so you can hear what it has to say. Just looking at older versions of the game. I might even grab AD&D First Ed Edition as well. But I think that's probably good enough. I don't think the Iron Golem, in all the years that I've run it, has been a terrible monster. It's been all right. It's been reasonable. Maybe it needed a little bit of a tweak, but not a huge tweak if you ask me. Hello, Matthew. How are you? I'm off to dinner. No problems, negative space. All good. Stop the gnome hate. Yes, let's be prejudiced to all the species and races. Thank you very much. I like the concept of the poison breath being a lingering cloud that is flammable. I don't want to make it a lingering cloud. I looked at that possibility. It was never a lingering cloud in AD&D, as you know, Fred Huber, because I know you used to play AD&D. So for me, I'm not really keen on the idea of making it flammable. It's doing poison damage already. I guess the thing is, oh, what have I missed? Did I mention anything about the poison condition? I did not. That's the problem, isn't it? That's what needs to be added. Sorry, people. Let's get back to here. Okay. Each creature in the area must make a DC 19 Constitution saving throw, taking 49 on average, or 11d8 poison damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful save. Whether is that it? No, whether you whether the targeted creatures succeed or fail, they still gain the poisoned condition. I was talking about this before and I didn't do anything with it. Whether the targeted creatures succeed or fail on the saving throw, they still gain the poison condition. Okay, that's what I needed to add. I knew I did. I was talking about it before and I forgot. Okay. Blah, 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 Fred. Okay, let's have a look. What else have we got here? It is so funny to think of ways to keep gnomes out of the game. Is that what you're trying to do? It's like, really? What's wrong with the gnomes? 3 times per day? Hello, Pale Rider. Dear. I mean, I noticed you when you mentioned the Rust Monster. I did notice the comment, Pale Rider, but you really do make yourself stand out when you say we should just make sure that it can do it 3 times a day. The Death Cloud. I have a glimmer of First Ed Edition, and it's okay. All right. I mean, we won't be able to follow First Ed Edition exactly. I guess it's just the theme behind what it's trying to do. You reckon poison condition for 2d4 rounds? No, I don't want a limited period of time. Most battles, like to be completely clear, most battles are over after about 3 rounds. You mean it's very rare. I mean, between 1 and 3 rounds, 1 to 4 rounds at high level, your battle's over. And I just don't see there's any point. I have just said you have the poison condition. I didn't say how to get rid of it. Do you notice that? You'll stay poisoned unless you can figure out how to get rid of it. That's what Lesser Restoration is for. Like most clerics can deal with something like that fairly easily, and the paladin can kind of get rid of conditions as well. There are quite a few features out there in 5e that just allow you to remove a condition. Not to mention there's quite a few classes that aren't even affected by the poison condition. Like monks aren't affected by the poison condition after a certain point, and it may well be around that range. I can't remember exactly. There's a point, right, where as a monk you just don't get affected by poison at all. Where is it? Is it Purity of Body? Here we go. Purity of Body at level 10, not a level 16, level 10. Your mastery of the key flowing through you makes you immune to disease and poison. So it's not going to have much of an effect on the monks. Okay. If we go and have a look at something like, not a fighter, but a paladin. Here we go. Paladin. Here we go. Did I go past it? No, here it is. Paladin. Okay, what have you got that you can deal with? Your lay on hands. What does it do? Lay on hands. You can use a certain number of points to do stuff, right? Alternatively, you can spend 5 points from your pool of healing to cure the target of 1 disease or neutralize 1 poison affecting it. And that can, look, the Paladin can do that when? Lay on Hands is at level 1. Giving it a number of rounds, having it only last 1 round, completely pointless. You're poisoned and you have to get rid of it. They're going to have, there's spells out there that can get rid of the poison condition. You're poisoned. And you stay poisoned until you become non-poisoned. I think that is the easiest way to deal with that. So, yeah. Not a number of rounds. You are just poisoned until you get rid of it. No, I don't think we need to repeat the poison damage. Yeah, I mean, again, is there any point? They're going to, after the fight, they're going to get rid of it. You know? First edition was a more boring variant. Golem only had a slow spell and a 1-foot aura. No other specials. Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. You're sure your guys... yeah, I'll smash. Hello, Pearshum. How are you? It is about the Golem. It is about the Golem. But, oops. Sorry, people. You're getting too much information. I'm all over the place. It's a virus, and it's called Fred. Paladins could make the Golem too easy. Paladins always make everything too easy, even without smite. They don't. That's it. Time space is breaking down. Okay, let me read the entry, the old entry to AD&D 2nd edition for the Iron Golem. I have to take my glasses off because the print is really small and my eyes are old and I can barely see what's going on here. So we're going to skip past all the other stuff. The first entry is just the fluff bit. Here's combat. The Iron Golem conforms to the strategies listed for the Stone Golem except as described here. So whatever fighting it does, it sort of follows whatever's going on with the Stone Golem. So we'll look at the Stone Golem in a second. It has a strength of 24. Okay, whatever. Iron Golem is immune to any weapon except those of +3 or better enchantment. I don't want to be that specific. I think we don't worry about that bit. Magical electrical attacks will slow it for 3 rounds. Okay, so you can slow it down by hitting with lightning or electricity. And magical fire attacks actually repair. So magical fire attacks actually repair 1 hit point of damage for each hit point hit die of damage. So it's a confusing formula, frankly. That would have caused. All other spells are ignored. Ooh, so it ignores an awful lot. Iron Golems are subject to the damage inflicted by Rust Monster. So a Rust Monster could make it break down. Once every 7 rounds, beginning either on the first or second round of combat, the Iron Golem breathes out a cloud of poisonous gas. So that's our gas thing. It does this automatically with no regard to the effects it might have. And really, it's not going to be affected by it, so why would it worry? Okay. The gas cloud fills a 10-foot cube directly in front of it, which dissipates by the following round. So it's only really affecting... So we don't have to track it. I don't want to put in a tracking thing. You get hit by it, it's over, it's done, and it dissipates. Rather than it's now a mist that hangs there that you can now make explode. Assume there is somewhere for the gas to go. So, okay, so that's that bit. The only thing in AD&D is that lightning or electrical damage would slow it down. Now, we could include that. We could. Next, the Stone Golem. It talked about using the Stone Golem combat tactics. Let's have a look and see what the Stone Golem is doing. It is mindless in combat, only following the simple tactics of their masters. They are completely... Now, here's the other thing. Quite often, you might have an Iron Golem who is controlled by a magic user. So if your combat breaks out, you probably have a magic user and it's got an Iron Golem with it as a protector. Or 2 Iron Golems, potentially. It is emotionless and cannot be swayed in any way from their instructions. In other words, you cannot charm this thing. They will not pick up and use weapons in combat, even if ordered to. Always preferring their fists. This is for a stone golem, not an iron golem. Stone golems have a strength of 22 for the purpose of breaking through things. Don't worry about that bit. The stone golem is immune to any weapon except those of +2 or better. Well, in other words, we've got something like that. We're just not stipulating what level of enchantment it needs to have. A rock to mud spell slows a golem for a certain number of rounds. It reverses mud to rock, acts to heal the golem, restoring all its hit points, blah, blah, blah. Flesh to stone does not affect. So in other words, anything that tries to affect its form, you might be able to change the environment around it, but you can't change its form. I think we've got the basics of what we needed to have there done. Yeah. Okay, what do you got here? Senpai. Whose senpai noticed you? Fred squared is awesome. Am I squared? I don't know why I'm squared. Okay, perhaps the answer is an unholy stone paladin. It is made by Nice, like it. Very funny. Okay, let's go back to our iron golem. And I'm going to end this poll. And I honestly think this will be good enough. As I said, iron golem's not really a solo monster. Okay? It fights with some other golem, like probably another iron golem, or with a magic user. Because it's probably its main bodyguard or protector. You know, you rock around. I've got my bodyguards, and it's 2 iron golems. I've done this before myself, by the way. So yeah. Oh, hang on. Let's grab this. There's a reason why I keep reviewing everything at the end, people, because I have been recording these. I know not all of you like to sit here for an hour or two watching me do a live stream. So I have been trying to record stuff, but editing is my biggest problem right now. Anyway, let's go over the changes and just talk about them quickly so that you know exactly where my head is at. And I think we have done the changes that it needed to have. The only thing that maybe is missing from this is something around lightning, and I'm still not completely convinced that it's necessary. Anyway, right. So the Iron Golem, remastering, doing a fix-up of the Dungeons & Dragons 5e Iron Golem. So I didn't do an awful lot. It's a pretty good stat block. I've always found that when I tested it, it wasn't a huge problem. I just needed to make very small tweaks to make it work. So its armor class was a 20. I've actually found that's probably a bit too high. I've gone down to a 19. Don't worry about it. It's its hit points that are more important, and it's got a lot of damage immunities and condition immunities too. So it's actually well protected in many respects. Its hit points, I suggest the average being 210, which is normal. I haven't changed that, but I would use the maximum of 300. If you're dealing with a challenge rating 16 monster like the Iron Golem, your characters are probably level 16 as well. Don't muck around, use the 300. Didn't change the speed. I didn't change any of the ability scores or modifiers. I did give it some saving throws because it's very weak to dexterity saving throws, intelligence saving throws, and charisma. And even giving it proficiency in dexterity, intelligence, and charisma saving throws will not make it that strong, okay? It's still going to be quite vulnerable. You might be thinking, what about wisdom? We don't really need to worry about that because it's not going to be affected by charm magic. You know, magic that affects it and tries to charm it usually uses wisdom. That's not going to work. If you can use illusions, yes, you could trick it. So wisdom would be a factor. I think that's perfectly fine. It makes sense to me that a construct like this could be tricked. I've given it athletics as a proficiency because it should be able to shove, push, throw, and whatever else, break free. It should be harder to do with this sort of creature. It is designed for being strong, and athletics makes sense. Damage immunities. I left all that pretty much the same. The only thing I did is I changed some of the wording around You know, the fire, poison, psychic, that's cool, but bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from a non-magical attack, okay, it's immune to that. You have to have a magic weapon or a weapon made from adamantium. It doesn't have to be magical, but it has to be made from that particular type of metal. So I've stipulated that and been very clear. It's condition immunities: charmed, exhaustion, frightened, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, all make sense. But I did include stunned because it doesn't have any chakra points, and a monk being able to stun this thing, no, I don't think so. That would just shut the monster down, and you won't get anywhere after that. Your monster won't go and do anything. They're probably going to wail on it, and it'll be dead very quick. Dark vision stayed the same. Passive perception's all good. Languages is the same. Challenge rating, as I said, will not be shifted. Proficiency bonus is the same. Fire absorption is actually, I think it's perfect the way it is. The immutable form, that is perfectly fine. Magic resistance, perfectly fine. Its magic weapon, I did change the wording just a fraction. So the golem's weapon and unarmed attacks are magical. So if it uses a slam or a fist or an elbow or whatever it is, or kicks you or whatever, it is a magical attack, just like its sword that it's wielding if you're using a sword attack. It only had 2 melee attacks as multi-attack. So multi-attack is now 4 melee attacks. And that is so that we don't have to push the damage up quite so much. We did have to change that, but I've done that. So you get 4 attacks, not 2. I never found 2 attacks being enough. Its slam attack, it was a plus 13, which was pretty generous, I guess. But truthfully, I think it should be a plus 14, okay, to hit both of them, sword and the slam. Don't worry so much about things like, you know, what the strength modifier is and its proficiency bonus and then what its sword bonus is. Just don't worry about any of that sort of stuff, okay? Just hit the number that works for that challenge rating. Its damage output was quite low. It only had 3d8 plus 7. I've gone to 4d8 plus 7, so I think the average damage was somewhere in the 22 range or something like that. It's now 25. The average is 25, okay? I've gone from 3d10 plus 7 for slashing damage with a sword. It's now 4d10 plus 7, okay? So the average damage has gone up. I think it was 25. It's now a 29, okay? My expectation is that you as the game master will use the sword attacks after you've used your poison breath, okay? With your poison breath being the most important thing to use first. But sword attacks when you're waiting for the recharge to take place. I don't expect you to use the slam unless they start disarming your golem. So the breath weapon, there are some changes. The recharge is fine. I didn't change the distance, so it's still a 15-foot cone. And each creature in the area must make a DC 19 Constitution saving throw. DC was fine. It's just the damage output. It was only I think it's like a 10d8 poison damage on a failed save and half as much on a successful save, which meant it only did about 45 points of damage, and the cone of 15 feet is probably only to include, if you're lucky, 2 individuals. So to make sure our damage output is high enough for that level, I've gone with, okay, let's push it up by 1. So I gave it 1 more dice. So you have 11d8, not 10. So the average is now 49, okay? But it did not mean that you had the poison condition. Even though you were doing poison damage to them with the breath weapon, you did not have the poison condition. So whether the targeted creature succeeds or fails on the saving throw, they are still going to have the poison condition, okay? And there is no time limit for how long they can be poisoned. Why is this? Because there are so many ways to get rid of the poison condition, even at level 1. It's not going to be an issue for the players to deal with. And so, you know, they're level 16. They're going to have more than enough ways to get rid of the poison condition. They can sort that out themselves. And those are the changes to the Iron Golem. Not really a lot. I actually think that's pretty good, considering. So I would say Wizards of the Coast did a reasonable job. Maybe just the damage output was not quite where it needed to be. Anyway, that is that. And we're going to tootle off. I will be back tomorrow. What am I going to do tomorrow? We're going to make a playable slard. You know how as a game master, you're constantly trying to figure out how to get a slardy, you know, those demonic froggy creatures to implant a tadpole into one of your player characters so that they transform into a slard. Well, you need a playable slard so that if you decide to not take over their character and let them continue playing as a slard because the players are not foolish enough to eject them from the party or kill them and get rid of them, you could keep the slardy in the party, and there's always that possibility of messing with your players and getting the player playing the slard to actually insert tadpoles into everybody in the party, which is evil in so many different ways, but funny and quite entertaining and very dramatic, and players should know better than to allow a slard in their party. So let's give them the opportunity to fall into that trap. We've been doing a lot of these that are like, it's a trap. It looks like an advantage, but not really. Okay, I'll make sure to put this up onto Patreon at the end of the week, the Iron Golem stat block, at least the first draft. I still need to test it again. How many times have I run this monster? So many times, but I'll still have to test it anyway. So let's get out of here, and you get on with your day and I'll get on with my day, and I'll be back tomorrow. Yeah, I think that's the plan. So huge thank you to all of you for watching and listening. Thanks for taking part in the poll. Do you think the Iron Golem stat block for Dungeons & Dragons 5e needs fixing? Yes, 57%. Undecided, 28%. No, 7%. And 7% said just watching out of 14 votes. I think it needed some sort of adjustment, and I think that's probably a reasonable adjustment to make to it. Okay. I want to thank all of my patrons who support me on Patreon, because really you guys are the ones who make this possible. YouTube does not pay well, and I do appreciate your support, and I hope that you get lots and lots out of my Patreon. I put a lot of stuff up there. I want to thank Per Sherm, Matthew, Fred Huber, I believe Overboard was here as well. Pale Rider for your input and your ideas. Negative Space, I think I said Negative Space. Did I? I don't know. Sam, or Same, I think it's Sam, isn't it? Sam. And if there was anybody else, I think there was Nacho was here for a little while as well. Derp, can't forget Derp. So yes, wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.